The storm didn't sound like wind anymore. It sounded like the mountain itself was exhaling, slow, heavy, and furious. Snow blasted sideways in sheets, erasing depth, distance, and hope. The SEAL team could barely see 5 feet ahead, their night vision blinded by white static, their optics frozen solid. When the distant echo of an engine, buried somewhere inside the blizzard, grew louder, Chief Ortega leaned toward the woman crouched beside him. His voice cracked from cold and fear. "It's over," he whispered. But Harper Raines didn't blink, because in the violent chaos of the whiteout, she had just seen something no one else could. The storm had revealed a single shot. You're watching Warthog Valor Stories, where impossible missions collide with the warriors no one ever expects. For the moments that rewrite every rule on the battlefield, make sure to subscribe. The blizzard had been raging for so long that time felt irrelevant. The sky had collapsed into a wall of white, and the mountain ridge had turned into a shifting maze of ice and wind. Every step the SEALs took sounded muted, swallowed instantly by the storm. They weren't moving through snow anymore. The storm was moving through them. Harper Raines walked slightly behind the formation, her rifle hugged close, scope covered, breath controlled. Her movements were calm, deliberate, almost meditative. Anyone watching from afar might think she was simply pacing her breath, but Harper was doing far more. She was listening to the wind, to the air pressure, to the way snowflakes angled as they sliced past. Most soldiers fought weather. Harper read it. The mission was straightforward: intercept a hostile winter unit advancing from the opposite slope. But nothing about this storm was straightforward. Drones were grounded, thermals were useless, radios spat only static, each burst of interference sounding like ice cracking under pressure. A gust slammed into the team, nearly knocking one operator sideways. Another cursed and wiped his goggles, only for them to freeze again within seconds. Ortega's voice cut through the wind. "Scopes down. NVGs are done. We've got zero visual." Another operator shook his head. "We're blind, Chief. If they hit the ravine first, the LZ is gone." Harper crouched, placing her gloved hand flat against the snow. She wasn't feeling temperature. She was reading vibration. The ground tremor coming from the valley wasn't wind. It was mechanical, rhythmic, coordinated. "They're close," she said quietly. Ortega looked at her, his lashes coated in ice. "You can hear that through this?" She didn't answer, not to be rude, but because another sound threaded through the storm. A metallic shift, a chain dragging, the unmistakable rattle of a mounted weapon being locked into position. That confirmed it. The enemy wasn't lost. They were setting up, and the SEAL team was walking straight into a kill zone. A wave of fear washed through the group, subtle but undeniable. Even trained operators reached a point where the environment became an enemy more lethal than bullets.
Ortega's breath trembled as he leaned closer. Snow clung to his beard like frostbite spreading. "We won't get eyes on them. Not in this. It's over." Harper slowly removed her right glove. The cold bit instantly, biting deep, but she didn't flinch. Her fingertips needed to feel the trigger exactly, with zero barrier. She wiped the snow from the rifle's receiver and exhaled in one long, controlled breath. "No," she murmured, eyes narrowing as she scanned what looked like a wall of endless white. "It's only over for the people who can't see." And then the storm shifted. Not fully, not long. Just one brief breath of the mountain, a half-second pause where the wind stalled and the snow thinned into a narrow corridor. Most people would never notice it. Harper did. Her pupils contracted, her muscles locked into stillness. There. One open channel through the whiteout. The only shot the storm didn't hide. The break in the storm was barely a flicker, half a second of thinner snow, a subtle shift in wind direction. But Harper Raines knew it was a clear opening. Most operators wouldn't even have noticed it. In this kind of whiteout, the world looked like one solid sheet of chaos. But Harper tracked the storm the way some people read maps. When the snow curved instead of scattered, when the wind dipped instead of howled, she knew something had interrupted the natural flow. Ortega crouched beside her, his voice nearly swallowed by the blizzard. "Harper, what did you see?" she said calmly. "A firing position. Heavy weapon. Elevated. They're waiting for us to cross the ravine." One of the SEAL team shook his head. "You can't see anything in this. Nobody can." "I don't need to see them. I can hear what the storm hides." Just seconds earlier, a metallic rattle had cut through the wind, the unmistakable clink of a mounted weapon being locked in, then the faint crunch of boots repositioning on ice. Those sounds didn't belong to nature. They belonged to the enemy. Another violent gust hit the ridge, erasing the corridor again. But Harper didn't move. She had already mapped the angle, the height, the distance. The storm had given her just enough to work with. Ortega crouched beside her, shivering. "Even if you're right, the wind will throw the shot. Bullet drift will be insane." Harper said, "The wind isn't random, not here." She closed her eyes for a moment. The storm's rhythm pulsed around her. Gust, lull, crosswind, gust. Repeating every few seconds, brutal but predictable. And right before the cycle reset, the blizzard hesitated, a tiny stillness, the mountain's breath catching. That was her window. She removed one glove despite the freezing pain and gripped the rifle bare-handed. The metal bit into her skin, but she needed full sensitivity on the trigger. The SEAL team watched her, some doubtful, some terrified, all completely blind in the storm. "Harper," Ortega said softly, "there's no visibility. That shot is impossible."
"No," she murmured, lowering her cheek to the stock. "It's precise." The wind pushed hard, then suddenly eased. 4 seconds. 5. The storm inhaled, the snow thinned, and Harper fired into what looked like solid white. The blizzard swallowed the muzzle flash instantly. No one saw the bullet travel. No one even heard impact at first. But then a dull metallic crack rolled across the ridge, followed by a sharp collapse of weight hitting ice. The heavy weapon had gone silent. Ortega stared at Harper like she'd just bent the laws of physics. "What the hell did you hit?" Her breath fogged in the cold as she watched the storm shift again. "Not a weapon," she said. "A gunner." The ridge fell into a stunned silence after Harper's shot. Even the storm seemed to pause, as if the mountain itself were waiting to see whether the impossible had truly happened. Then the wind roared back, dragging sheets of ice across the team's gear and burying the moment under another wave of white. Ortega touched his earpiece out of habit, forgetting the radios were useless. "If the gunner's down, they'll reposition. They won't leave that ledge unattended." Harper kept her rifle raised, eyes narrowed against the storm. "Exactly. They'll send someone to check why their overwatch just went silent." One of the SEALs cursed under his breath. "Great. So they know we're close." They knew before. The weapon wasn't for random patrols. It was waiting for us. The implication landed heavy. The enemy wasn't lost in the storm. They weren't struggling. They were prepared. In fact, they were using the whiteout as if they understood it just as deeply as Harper did. A faint vibration rolled through the snow beneath them, slow, deliberate, like boot steps traveling along ice. Harper shifted her rifle slightly to the left. "There," she whispered. "You hear something?" Ortega asked.
More than one, she said. Descending the ledge. They're moving in two staggered teams. How in hell can you tell? Harper didn't answer immediately. She listened. The storm carried sound strangely. Some tones vanished, others traveled farther than they should. But footsteps on snow had signatures: weight, cadence, confidence. These weren't inexperienced fighters wandering in blind. They're trained. They know how to move in a weather like this. A cold realization rippled through the team. If the enemy was operating confidently in a whiteout this severe, they weren't just mountain fighters. They were specialists. "We need to move," Martega muttered. "If they flank the ravine, we're boxed in." But Harper didn't move. She kept tracking sound more than sight. Hold. They think they're unseen. Let them commit. Seconds passed. The snow thickened. Every man in the team lay still, barely breathing, waiting for Harper's word. Then, a shadow flickered. Not a full silhouette, just a distortion in the snow's flow. Harper caught it instantly. She didn't fire yet. It wasn't the right angle, not the right heartbeat of the storm. But the enemy was close. Too close.
One seal tensed, hand drifting toward his sidearm. Harper raised a finger. Wait. The storm pulsed again. Gust, lull, crosswind. And in that quieter moment, a whisper carried across the ice. Not English, not accidental. A short, coded phrase, perfectly timed with the wind. Ortega's eyes widened. Did they just signal each other? Harper said. They're communicating through the storm, using the wind as cover. That meant one thing. The enemy sniper, or spotter, knew the same trick she did. Someone out there wasn't just surviving the blizzard. They were reading it. A new shape emerged in the whiteness, low, cautious, weapon ready. Harper steadied her rifle. There, that's the one checking the ledge. Can you hit him? Ortega whispered. Harper exhaled slowly. Yes, but the storm cycle has changed now. My window's smaller. How small? She reset her grip, breath steadying into absolute stillness. 1/4 of a second. Ortega swallowed hard. Harper, no one can shoot in a 1/4-second window. She didn't look away from the scope. I can. The team lay buried in the snow like ghosts, barely distinguishable from the terrain. The storm pressed against them with crushing force, each gust threatening to drown out the faint movements Harper was tracking. She didn't need to see the enemy clearly. She only needed to sense the pattern behind the chaos. Through her scope, there wasn't a silhouette, only distortion. A faint disruption in how the flakes moved, how the wind bent around an object that wasn't supposed to be there. The enemy scout crept toward the ledge, careful, cautious, checking why their overwatch had gone silent. He moved low, almost crawling, using the snow's thickness to his advantage. Harper adjusted her rifle 2 millimeters. It felt like nothing, but at this range, in this storm, it was everything. Ortega whispered, Harper, if you miss, I won't. He didn't argue. He knew it wouldn't matter. The storm followed its cycle, gust, lull, crosswind, gust. Earlier, Harper had used the 5-second pattern to land her first impossible shot, but the blizzard was intensifying now, and the cycle had shortened. The mountain wasn't giving her the same window. The calm moment she needed barely existed anymore. A 1/4 second. Too small for any normal sniper to calculate drift, wind shears, and elevation. Too brief for the mind to consciously process. But Harper wasn't guessing. She felt the shift in her skin, the drop in pressure against her cheek, the subtle warming on the wind's underside, the slight pause in the flake's sideways trajectory. The enemy scout bent forward, reaching for the fallen gunner. Harper's breathing slowed. Her pulse matched the rhythm of the storm. Not yet. Not yet. The wind hit a hard crest, then dipped, just a micro lull,
so fast most people wouldn't recognize it as anything except randomness. Harper knew better. The storm wasn't random, it breathed, and this was the mountain's heartbeat skipping for the tiniest fraction of time. That was her quarter second. Harper squeezed the trigger, not hurried, not anxious, just controlled inevitability.
The rifle barked once, then silence swallowed everything. The bullet vanished into the blizzard, threading the gap, passing through the storm the same way a whisper slips between words. A split beat later, a shape collapsed in the snow. No cry, no alarm, just the weight of a trained operative dropping into the drift. One of the SEALs sucked in a sharp breath. Ortega stared at Harper like he'd just watched a magician breach physics. How did you time that?" he asked. Harper stayed behind the rifle, scanning. "The storm gives signals. You just have to speak its language." "What language is that?" another operative muttered. "The kind that doesn't use sight. The kind that tells you what's about to move." But before the team could reposition, Harper stiffened. More footsteps. Heavier this time. Multiple. And then, echoing faintly through the white, another coded whisper. Deeper, sharper, commanding. Harper's voice dropped to a low warning. "They're not sending scouts anymore." "So who is it?" Ortega asked. Harper's jaw tightened. "Their sniper." And he wasn't coming to investigate. He was coming to hunt. The storm thickened as if reacting to Harper's last shot, swallowing sound and shape until the whole ridge felt unreal. The SEAL team pressed lower into the snow, every instinct telling them to disappear. But Harper wasn't hiding. She was listening, brow tightened, jaw locked, rifle steady. The footsteps approaching were different from the earlier scouts. Heavier, more deliberate. Whoever was moving now wasn't feeling their way through the storm. He knew exactly where he was going. That alone was enough to set every operator on edge. Ortega leaned close. "You're sure? Their sniper?" Harper nodded once. "He's not searching. He's tracking." "Tracking what? Us?" "No, me." Silence spread through the team. Not the storm's silence, theirs. Even experienced operators understood what that meant. A trained sniper could pick up microsignatures, air displacement, pressure changes, even the rhythm of breathing. Harper had just announced her position with 2 impossible shots. Of course he was coming. Harper kept scanning the white, though she wasn't expecting to see anything. Snipers rarely revealed silhouette. They revealed intent. She watched for inconsistencies, the way flakes swirled oddly around a shape, the way wind split against something it shouldn't, the faint distortion of heat where there should be none. She found it. Not a body, not a weapon, a ripple. A subtle wave in the snow's trajectory, like a tiny pocket of air being pushed aside. "He's flanking right," Harper whispered, 50 meters out, low angle. A younger SEAL raised his rifle, panic sharpening his breath. "I don't see anything." "He sees you," Harper warned, her voice razor-thin. "Don't move." The operator froze. A moment later, a glint, just a fragment of reflection, flashed deep in the storm. It wasn't enough to identify a target, but it was enough to confirm Harper's fear. He was using the blizzard the same way she was. The enemy sniper fired.
The crack was faint, almost gentle, swallowed instantly by the whiteout. A spray of snow burst inches from the young SEAL's helmet. He exclaimed and ducked, but Harper grabbed his collar and yanked him flat before a second shot stitched the air where his head had been. "He's close," Harper hissed, "closer than he should be." Ortega's face tightened. "Can you counter him?" Harper exhaled once, scanning the storm for the next ripple. "Not from here. He's cutting angles. We need higher ground. Harp, we move, he tracks us." "He's already tracking us," she said,
standing into a crouch. But he's reading the storm from below. If I get above the wind shear, I can see his distortions before he sees mine. Ortega hesitated only a second. Team, on Harper. Move slow. Minimal sound. As they crawled toward the elevation, Harper glanced back at the storm behind them. Somewhere inside that white void, another sniper was reading the same wind she was. But only one of them understood its rhythm. The higher the team climbed, the harsher the storm became. Wind hammered the ridge, snow slicing across their faces like sand blades. The SEALs struggled to stay low, but Harper pushed forward, scanning the air as if the blizzard itself were whispering coordinates. "He's still tracking us," Ortega said, breath shaking. "That's why we need the high line," Harper replied. "He's reading the lower winds. Up here, his angles fall apart." A shot cracked from below, sharp, precise. Snow burst inches from Harper's knee. The enemy sniper was adjusting faster now, firing between gusts with unnerving accuracy. A second shot followed, closer. "He's zeroing in," Ortega warned. "I know. He's good, but he's fighting the storm wrong." She closed her eyes. Vision was useless here. Distraction. Instead, she listened for distortions, the slight flutter where the wind bent around a barrel, the faint drop in pressure when a shooter inhaled. The enemy sniper wasn't invisible. He was disturbing the storm in small ways. "There," she murmured. "North slope, tucked under a snow shelf." The team squinted into the white. Nothing. No silhouette. No shape. "You're sure?" Ortega asked. "Yes, but I don't have a window yet." The storm churned violently. Earlier, Harper had relied on a repeating wind cycle, a brief lull every few seconds, but now the rhythm was irregular. The calm moments had collapsed entirely. The enemy knew it too. His shots came quicker, tighter, bracketing Harper's position. One more, and he'd have her. Harper steadied her breathing. "I only need a fraction of a second." Then the mountain shifted. A deep pressure drop rolled across the ridge, rare, heavy, unmistakable. An inversion pocket opened above the enemy's cover, carving a tiny bubble of still air in the chaos. It lasted no more than a blink. Harper's eyes snapped open. "That's it." She fired. The bullet cut through the comm pocket cleanly. A distant, soft impact followed. Then the storm swallowed all sound. The enemy sniper's shape slid sideways into the snow, hidden almost instantly. Ortega let out a long breath. "Ortega, you beat a sniper who could see through this storm?" Harper rose, brushing snow from her rifle. "No, I beat the storm before he did." As the wind eased, the ravine path appeared through thinning white. The team advanced, alive only because the woman they once doubted had heard the mountain's language clearer than anyone. Behind them, the blizzard closed again, erasing every trace except the truth. The storm doesn't hide everything. Not from her.